Hello there, my name is Sherman and this is a quick look at my final year university project, Learning Programming for Competition. The aim of this project was to create an application that could be used in learning environments to bring a bit of fun to learning some basic C-style procedural programming concepts. It's actually in Java though. This is done using this game that you can see here called Ant Arena. In this game, players are tasked with programming a logic for an ant, which tends to feed and sustain its colony. You compete against other players and their programmed ants, and the last colony alive wins. So we can see a session running here in the background. We've got our little ants running about, looking for the piles of food, which are the blue circles, and taking them back to the colony. And as the colony gets enough food, it produces more ants, and the game goes on. So let's take a bit of a closer look. Copy it over here and we'll start again. So as far as the game works, this is a colony. It represents a player in the game, and there is a piece of code that has been compiled up which will be used for all the ant logic there. The number below and the bar represents the colony's food stockpiles, and the number above represents the colony's health. If either of these numbers get to 0, the colony dies and you're out of the game. You've basically lost. This green circle just represents the sort of arena space. The more players there are in the game, the bigger the circle, and the more evenly spread around it you are. These blue piles are basically food piles. So we have let this start and have a look. So these are your ants. They run around. You can see their direction they're facing with the little T on them. They have their own energy bars. Every action the ant does, walking, carrying food, attacking other colonies, or anything special like that, costs the ant energy. You can choose to keep your ants alive or not. It's really up to you. With the particular rule set, when the game starts, you have enough food to produce 4 ants, and as you can see, these ants have been programmed just to randomly walk around. If they notice they're near food, because they have a slight view radius, they'll go straight to food and go straight back to the colony to drop it off. And this will keep going until the game's run out of food and these ants die off. It's a pretty simple concept, really and truly, the game. It needs to be quite simple and open-ended. These ants aren't actually displaying all the things an ant can do. You can attack other ants, you can attack other colonies, you can pick up and drop food at will. The whole point is that there's meant to be enough strategy and enough different strategies that you can come up with, that when you present this to people as a learning tool, the fact that they want to develop interesting strategies to be better at this game pushes them to think of how to do things differently in the code they're actually writing. And we can see a little bit about how that might work as we go on. So that's the basic game. Let's take a look a bit more at this application. So one of the major things that I want to achieve with this project is that, because it was supposed to be a tool that you would give to people who may be a little familiar with programming, but at the same time wouldn't have maybe have gotten as deep into it to be using IDEs or command line clients for compiling code, might not really understand what happens to their code once they compile it, or maybe how it interacts with everything else. So the idea was to keep everything as contained in the application as possible. Don't make it so users have to go out to their IDE to compile code or their command line client. Make it like a one-click, really tight feedback loop from writing code to seeing exactly how it worked or exactly what doesn't work. So on the left here we have a small code editor. It does some very basic highlighting, just as a example here. It's a little hacky, but it works. And below we have a small output for where you can get your compile time messages if you've done it wrong. This is still Java, except that your code is taken from this editor and put into a template, which is then compiled off, and that template contains all of the rest of the boilerplate you need to actually have a valid Java class, and once that has been compiled, it gets reflected back into the program and instantly added into the game. So we can have a quick look at that by loading up a new piece of ant code. So we have a quick look here. Let's load up the bad ants. They're pretty fun. So open up, and here, as we can see, this is the code that makes the logic for bad ants. It's actually based on these good ant codes, the ants that are currently running around. Let's just give this a reset. So the ants currently running around go off this code that is in this else block. It's just very simple stuff. I really didn't want to introduce too many advanced concepts, especially like object orientation, or different data structures and that sort of thing. As I say, it's meant to be something to get people straight in there, but there's nothing stopping people from getting from this point and then going on to want to make more complicated code, but we'll get to that in a bit as well. So this code's pretty simple. If you know how to code, then you could probably work out what this does. It pretty much does exactly what it says on the tin. The interesting thing about this ant compared to the ones that are currently running is that this ant has an overall if-else structure that it makes it aware of its colony numbers. So just basically, if there are more than 20 ants in this colony, then what we're actually going to do is execute this block of code, which is if you're near an enemy ant, to go and attack it. So rather than just being your simple gatherers that we have currently running, these ants are going to gather until they feel like they have the numbers, and then go and attack other ants to try and gain the advantage. So if we just quickly name this, that'll be my name, these are the bad ants. We'll compile the code, save it one more time. As we can see, that has compiled successfully, and if we just press reset, the bad ants are now in the game. And we could wait, but I'll see if I can give them a favourable spawn. There we go, they've spawned right next to some food. Now there's 13 of them, they have the advantage. So if we just watch for a little bit, we're going to see that they're going to get to 20 ants. 17, oh here we go. And now they're going to ignore food, and every time they see another ant, as we can see here, they're now chasing this ant. This ant's being heavily attacked. This one might get it next. Oh, yep, there we go. Right, so, this is just an idea of, you want that sort of flexibility to change in your conditions, and it's really to get an idea, or to really show that, you want your code to react to what's going on currently around you. The app doesn't have it inbuilt. I didn't have enough time as part of my project time to really make this as best of a tool as it could be. What it really needs is like some kind of in-game help showing all of the variables and functions available to you as a player, so you can better know what you can and can't do. When it was actually play tested, I had a booklet that I gave to each participant, and they were able to ask questions from me or a couple of friends who also knew how this worked, and we were able to get through that way. But really and truly, this application needs a bit more just to make it particularly useful for people. So as I mentioned before, this is just meant to be a start-off point. The application is quite modular. This entire game here can be split out and run on its own piece of code. So the idea was, you give this to a classroom of people, they all come together, write some code that they think they're pretty happy with, and maybe in the middle or at the end of the session, or at both points, you collect all of the compiled classes and you just drop them into this application's folder where it looks for compiled classes. Just start the game or reset the game, and all the players are now in the game and competing against each other, trying to find out who has the best code, theoretically. And the reason that's theoretically is because if you notice, when I press the reset button, the food changes randomly all the time. There's no sort of exclusion zone from the ants colonies themselves. So, the game rules are a bit lax. There's not really too much balance there, but again, that was a time constraint. I would love to have put more time into play testing it to really get the game to a great point, but unfortunately didn't have the time. That's fixable though. It's just not too hard to try and fix that, to try and get a game that works solidly first, because people will quickly realise that if it's not about their actual logic and skills, it's more about luck, then it's not so interesting anymore. Some people might like the challenge to try and write some code that, in a situation where you're not entirely favoured, that it comes out tops, and some people definitely did try that, but these are just general things that I remember from sort of playtesting this and getting information from other people about what was going on. Let's add another. We should add some more ants. So the game can support quite a lot going on screen. It's probably good ants to be really creative about that. And then let's add. Oh, actually, let's put 3 of them in. We'll compile that too. And then we'll get some more bad ants in and see who comes out trumps. Oops. There we go, save it again. Let's reset this. So now, as you can see, we've got a much bigger game going on. 5 different colonies now. The game grows the arena. The more players there are, it adds more food. There's more going on. It's a little bit hard to see what's going on here, but as you can see, like, these are all the good ants here. We've got 3 sets of good ants, and they're just being straight out collectors. And because collecting seems to work really well in this at the moment, I don't think the bad ants are going to get a chance, because they'll only stop at 20 before they start attacking, whereas these ants will just go on forever. As we can see, this colony is nearly at 100 ants dominating the screen, really. Let's give us a reset, so we can favour the bad ants here. Maybe. So one thing I did mention earlier is that this just produces Java code. So if you really want to get to the point where you think, well, this is a nice, quaint text editor, but you really want to do something a bit more advanced, you can see here that a Java file is also outputted for you when you compile. And as we go up, we can see, the imports that you need and the class definitions, that sort of thing. There's nothing stopping anybody from really adding your own data structures here to probably manage your ants differently. You could have priority queues, you could have sort of decision trees, whatever you know how to do, whatever you think is the best way of doing it, rather than just this really, really simple procedural code that we see here. And so sort of one of the reflection points I had when I did the final write-up for this, and one that I've had as time has gone on, because this is 4 years old now, is that this, I don't think, is very intuitive to people who might be first coming into programming. Whilst a lot of programming in Java explicitly is taken away from you, you still might not intuitively understand what's going on here. Like, why am I calling a function here and using a variable here? And there are very good reasons for this. From my point of view, a lot of it was to do with protection, because smarter users realise that, well, I have access to these variables, I can just set them to whatever I want. And so in one particular instance, a player realised that if he just set his ant's energy to 500 on the beginning, each time this method is actually called, he would never die. And that's the kind of the stuff you playtest for, the things you just slightly miss as you're trying to get something done. But the syntax is a bit, again, it looks like code, and some people will be happy about that, but really and truly, I just wanted people to just understand the sort of like procedural execution of statements and the decision between which I should do at what point. One quite innocuous thing here that a beginner user definitely would notice, that I noticed and I wasn't able to really fix before finishing this, my time finished on this project, was that if you're using if blocks like this and you're not completely using a massive block of if else blocks, there's a chance that one or more of your conditions might clash, and then actually the thing that you want your ant to do, the thing you want your ant to do, it won't actually do it, and it might be hard for someone to figure out why, which is generally why you have demonstrators about, and then they have to understand exactly what's happening. What we actually could do is stick a return statement at the end of each one of these, if I could type, and then it wouldn't be so bad, because the entire function would just break out and there's no chance of it. But then having to explain that again, really, the subset of code that I have exposed, and I do expose in this application itself, is just a little lacking. A DSL probably would be the best thing here. I mean, it's in Java, and I think the only reason it was in Java for the project is because that's what a lot of universities teach, so they didn't have to then go and reteach Java syntax and that sort of thing. Which I understand, and I don't know if it's much of a problem as I'm making it out to be. So as we can see here, the world's run out of food now. All the ant colonies are dying out. This is normally how a game ends, and I don't know, I always feel like sometimes it's a bit anticlimactic, but the good ants 2 were the last colony about. Unfortunately, there's no sort of, yeah, you win, you're the best, or you managed to survive the longest. Again, simple things that can be added in, just I didn't have time to do so. So I can't really think of anything else to say about this project. I mean, other than the fact that it was really quite fun and offers a lot of challenges, just both in making this little game itself and making it be actually performant. You can see a little frame count up here at 60 frames per second. For a long time it couldn't run past 20, and it can handle, I think, about 500 different ants running around on screen before it starts to get a bit choppy. There's a lot of sort of game programming knowledge that have gone into this, especially when it comes to like collision detections and sort of game loops and when you do certain updates and that sort of thing. I think my proudest achievement in this was there's a quad tree running in the background. Unfortunately, I didn't program in any debug options when the thing is running, but there's another video on YouTube you could probably have a look, and it basically splits up the search space depending on how many ants are in any one place, so you don't end up doing like linear comparisons of all the ants to see if any of them are touching and that sort of thing. So, this in itself was quite challenging. The second other challenging part, to be quite honest with you, was this code box. I couldn't find some prepackaged open source Java code that would just give me a nice bit of code editor that would work with Swing. At the time, Swing was all I really knew just from my course. And so in the end, I had to start diving into JTextBox and all the back end of that in order to make just this highlighting happen, and it does work. It is a little buggy and it could be better. For you can even do tabs, but you can't do back tabs, and it's for people who use code editors or IDEs, so it's just not the best, but it's a good starting point without going really over the top of abstracting code away from you. The last thing that I think is what I think really helps this tight feedback loop of writing code and running it and writing code and running it is the fact that it actually includes the Eclipse compiler in it, which is a compiler written in Java to compile Java. And if it really wasn't for that, then this entire premise would have failed, because then you would have to break out this application, break the context, go compile it somewhere somehow and show people how to do this. Which, if you've only got a few hours, is confusing enough as it is for some people. I mean, I would admit I don't think it's inherently simple or obvious either. So, I think there's a good few elements here that come together in the basic sense, but really and truly, my personal feeling is that this project kind of failed what it really wanted to do, and that's probably because it was just very, very ambitious. One person working on it, not really enough to get something quite changing out of there, like really the best of tools. Not for the amount of time I had, anyway. So I don't think there's anything else I want to say about this. The code's available on GitHub. If you go to this address, which I'm going to post in the box because that is a lot easier. Let's have a look. If you go here, you can find the code on GitHub, and you can have a peruse. It's not the cleanest. I was going to work on cleaning up in the next couple of days. Sorry. I think all the libraries come with it, but some might need updating. As I'm pretty sure all the libraries are licensed enough that you can redistribute them and that sort of thing. And if you have any comments, drop them in the comments below, or please send me an email at sherman@shermanrose.uk. I do have one more thing to say, like my future plan, just some kind of future plans for this kind of idea. Not long after I'd done this project, I noticed there was a few websites that had games that were based around programming, and you could program robots and battle robots and that sort of thing. I really like that idea, and I don't see why that same idea couldn't be executed with this sort of concept. And to be frank, because this game is literally a separate application running an application, I don't think there's a reason why you couldn't have a piece of server software that just has a generic API that you use bindings in other languages to access that API. So then you could write your favorite data structures for controlling your ants, and depending on what your ants are doing in your favorite API, just submit your code up to the web service, and it can arrange pitting your ant against other ant colonies, and you can sort of dissect your code and how it acted in certain situations, and really help you find issues or maybe deadlocks or that sort of thing in your thinking. Again, this is purely just for a bit of fun. I mean, once you learn enough, once you're confident enough in what you're doing and you have a good amount of knowledge, then it doesn't really become a problem. But we all like to have fun, and one thing I can happily say is that the competition part of this went down really well. People are sitting in front of computers, whooping and cheering, and really excited to see their code means something more than just a command line console application, which could be quite boring sometimes. Well, I'm going to stop rambling now. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye.